Bonjour à tous and welcome to another episode of À la Une, the series in which we use the news in order to learn French. Now, the previous episode was about Brexit, and this one, as you can see, is about the American election. I hadn't intended for these videos to be quite so political, but I just didn't think I could do this series without talking about two very, very big topics. So I promise in the next episode I'll do something much less political. In this video, though, we're going to be watching two clips. The first is a speech given by François Hollande just after it was announced that Donald Trump had won the election, and the second is Marine Le Pen's reaction, which is quite a lot different, and I'll talk a little bit more about her later on. First of all, though, I want to talk to you about some of the key words that come up when you're reading about this topic or watching videos or whatever it may be. Of course, there are many, many words that you'll come across, and I could go through many hundreds, but these are just some of the most important ones that I could think of. So first of all, of course, we have the United States, which in French is les États-Unis. Les États-Unis. A lot of people struggle with the pronunciation on this one, I think for multiple reasons. I think first and foremost, you need to remember that that second T in État is silent. It is not les États-Unis, which I hear a lot. Okay, it is les États-Unis. The second thing is that liaison. So first of all, we have the S in les États, and then the S in État, États-Unis. Notice two things. Number one, it's not pronounced as an S, it's pronounced more like a Z, les États-Unis. And secondly, notice where it is in the word, okay? The S kind of moves over to the next syllable. So it's not les États-Unis, but les États-Unis, okay? If it helps, write it out phonetically, okay? That's fine, I'll let you do that. You do whatever you need to do in order to make it easier for yourself. But say it over and over again a few times, les États-Unis, and it will become a lot easier. Then, of course, we have a presidential election, which in French is quite simply une élection présidentielle. Une élection présidentielle. So, élection ends with T-I-O-N, and all words that end with T-I-O-N, or indeed S-I-O-N in French, are feminine, so présidentielle has to agree with that. Une élection présidentielle. Then we have to elect and elected. So we have the infinitive and the past participle. The infinitive to elect is élire, and the past participle elected is élu. So if you're familiar with the verb lire, meaning to read, which I imagine you are, then it's very similar to that. We have lire becomes lu, élire becomes élu. Élu is also the term used when we're talking about president-elect. Okay, that would be le président élu, literally the president elected. Next, we have to win. Now, you may already know the verb gagner, and indeed you can say gagner une élection. But in journalism, when we're talking about elections, we generally say remporter. Remporter une élection. Donald Trump a remporté l'élection. Okay, this is what you'll see more often. If anything, remporter is slightly more formal than gagner. But it's kind of just the terminology that we use. It's sort of a journalism standard. One other important difference between remporter and gagner is that gagner can stand alone. So, for example, you can say, woohoo, j'ai gagné. Okay, yay, I've won. You can't say, woohoo, j'ai remporté. Okay, it doesn't stand alone. You have to remporter quelque chose. So you could say, woohoo, j'ai remporté l'élection, or j'ai remporté le match. But you can't just say, j'ai remporté. Like, what did you remporte? Okay? Gagner, on the other hand, can be used either with an object, woohoo, j'ai gagné l'élection, or on its own, woohoo, j'ai gagné. However, in this context, as I've said, we generally use remporter. Then we have this term elector, which is very specific to the American system. So these aren't the people at the bottom, the sort of average Joe voting. These are the people who belong to the electoral colleges, as far as I understand it. You don't need to understand it in great detail. I certainly don't. Just know that this is a term that you will see in English journalism or speeches or whatever, and French. And in French, they are known as grand électeurs. Grand électeur. So literally grand electors or great electors, right? So this isn't the average everyday person, but the people who belong to the electoral college, who are the ones who directly vote for the president, as far as I understand it. If you know more about that than I do, then please do tell me, but I just know that this is something that comes up and something that you will need to understand. Next, we have the White House, which of course refers to the building itself, but is also used as a metonym, which is a situation where you have an entity, a thing, which represents a person. So the White House usually represents the president, so you might see something like, the White House issued a statement yesterday. Of course, it wasn't the actual house that issued the statement, it was the president. In the same way that if we say Downing Street issued a statement, that means the UK Prime Minister issued the statement. If we say Buckingham Palace released a statement, we're talking about the royal family. That's a metonym, and it's used as a metonym in both English and French, but in French it is indeed translated to La Maison Blanche. La Maison Blanche, literally, the house white. So that's all of the vocabulary that we're going to talk about for now. There will be words, of course, in the two videos that we watched that we will discuss. However, first of all, we're just going to watch the first clip all the way through without subtitles, without anything, just to see how much you understand. The good thing about watching a speech is that they speak very slowly and clearly. There are lots of gaps. They're using a very correct French, and I think it's very important to know how to speak a language correctly so that then you can break the rules afterwards. The disadvantage with this, though, is that they're speaking so correctly that if you start speaking in the same way they do, you might sound quite formal. So we're going to discuss the things that we can use on a day-to-day basis rather than going into great detail about some of the formal language that they're using. So first of all, we have the clip by François Hollande.
Le peuple américain vient de se prononcer. Il a élu Donald Trump président des États-Unis. Je le félicite comme il est naturel entre deux chefs d'État démocratiques. J'ai une pensée pour Hillary Clinton, avec laquelle j'ai eu à travailler durant la présidence Obama. Cette élection américaine ouvre une période d'incertitude. Je dois l'aborder avec lucidité et clarté. Les États-Unis constituent un partenaire de tout premier plan pour la France. Et ce qui est en jeu, c'est la paix, c'est la lutte contre le terrorisme, c'est la situation au Moyen-Orient, ce sont les relations économiques et c'est la préservation de la planète. Sur tous ces sujets, j'engagerai sans tarder une discussion avec la nouvelle administration américaine. Elle entrera en fonction le 20 janvier. Mais je le ferai avec vigilance et franchise, car certaines positions prises par Donald Trump durant la campagne américaine doivent être confrontées aux valeurs et aux intérêts que nous partageons avec les États-Unis. Et l'amitié entre nos deux peuples et notre histoire commune nous y aideront. La France poursuivra également la coopération transatlantique, sans concession et en toute indépendance. Ce nouveau contexte, provoqué par l'élection américaine, exige plus que jamais que la France soit forte et qu'elle prenne ses responsabilités partout dans le monde, comme je l'ai fait depuis 2012. Ce contexte appelle également à une Europe unie et également capable de s'exprimer et de porter une politique partout où ses intérêts ou ses valeurs sont en cause. Je pense à la liberté, à la dignité, à la cohésion sociale, à la lutte contre la pauvreté.
Okay, so I don't really want to talk about his political agenda here, exactly what his opinions are, but I think this speech just shows how unhappy François Hollande is. He doesn't say it explicitly, he doesn't say, oh goodness me, Donald Trump has won, we're all going to die, But he's clearly not entirely happy about this. And you should understand that François Hollande is part of Le Parti Socialiste, the Socialist Party. So he's pretty much on the left. Okay, he's not extreme left, but he's, left enough. Donald Trump being on the right, there's a little bit of a disconnect here. So it's understandable that François Hollande is not elated about this election result, but he does it in a relatively diplomatic way. So let's have a look at exactly what he says, and you can reach your own conclusions on that. Remember, we're here, though, just to learn French. I don't want to get into a political debate here. So, what does he say, first of all?
Le peuple américain vient de se prononcer.
Le peuple américain vient de se prononcer. Okay, so first of all, we have this concept of le peuple, which doesn't exactly translate directly to people. I mean, it does, but not in the everyday sense of people that we use in English. It doesn't refer to a group of individuals, but rather one collective group, a people. Okay, when we talk about a particular people, not many different people. The American people, now as it happens in English, you probably would say the American people have voted, but this is a people, right? If you're referring to individuals, a group of individuals, then you would just say les gens, les personnes, or even just in this case, les Américains. But he's talking about the American people as a whole. Vient de se prononcer. Notice the use of a singular verb because le peuple is singular. Venir de, faire quelque chose, is to have just done something. So in English we use a past tense. In French there is no evidence of a past tense here. Right, vient de se prononcer, it's all in the present, but it expresses something which happened in the recent past. So, le peuple américain vient de se prononcer. The American people have just se prononcer, you could say spoken, decided, perhaps. Okay, they have pronounced themselves. They have made their decision clear. They have just made their decision. Then he says,
Il a élu Donald Trump président des États-Unis.
Il a élu Donald Trump président des États-Unis. Okay, so Donald Trump with the most beautiful French accent you can possibly muster. Il a élu. Il here refers back to le peuple. So il a élu. We've already seen élu is elected. So they have, or it has rather, elected Donald Trump president of the United States. Nothing too difficult there.
Je le félicite comme il est naturel entre deux chefs d'État démocratiques.
So here we have what I think is the first indication that François Hollande is not so happy about this. Je le félicite comme il est naturel entre deux chefs d'État démocratiques. So je le félicite. Féliciter is to congratulate. Félicitation is congratulations. But je le félicite, I congratulate him. Comme il est naturel entre deux chefs d'État démocratiques. So, comme il est naturel, as it is natural, entre deux, between two, chefs d'État démocratiques. So, démocratique, democratic, chefs d'État, heads of state. So, I'm congratulating him, as it is natural to do so between two democratic heads of state. So, he's not congratulating him because he wants to, or because he's happy about it, but that's the natural thing to do.
J'ai une pensée pour Hillary Clinton, avec laquelle j'ai eu à travailler durant la présidence Obama.
J'ai une pensée pour Hillary Clinton, again, really nice, strong French accent there, avec laquelle j'ai eu à travailler durant la présidence Obama. So, j'ai une pensée pour Hillary Clinton. I have a thought for Hillary Clinton, or rather I spare a thought for Hillary Clinton would probably be a better translation, but either way we understand it, this is not a translation exercise. Avec laquelle, with whom, j'ai eu à travailler. So avoir à, faire quelque chose, is to have to do something, just as in English. It's a sort of more formal way of saying devoir. Travailler, work, so avec laquelle j'ai eu à travailler, with whom I've had to work, durant la présidence Obama. So durant, it's not as common as pendant, but it means the same thing. It means during. Durant is perhaps a little more formal than pendant, but it's exactly the same. You could put pendant there. La présidence Obama, the Obama presidency. So the whole thing, I spare a thought for Hillary Clinton with whom I've had to work during the Obama presidency.
Cette élection américaine ouvre une période d'incertitude.
Now this is the key phrase of the entire speech. This is what all of the newspapers were talking about after this speech was made. Cette élection américaine ouvre une période d'incertitude. So cette élection américaine, this American election, opens, une période d'incertitude, a period of uncertainty. Again, there's more doubt in François Hollande's mind here. Okay, he's being quite clear that this is not going to be easy for him. You know, it's not like a woohoo, Donald Trump's president. It's, we don't really know what's going to happen now.
Je dois l'aborder avec lucidité et clarté.
Je dois l'aborder avec lucidité et clarté. Okay, so je dois, I have to, I must. L'aborder. Aborder is to approach something or to handle something. It's quite a useful word, actually. I have to handle it avec lucidité et clarté. So lucidité, lucidity, clearness, clarity, et clarté, which is clarity. They both kind of mean the same thing. So I have to approach it in a clear manner, with clarity.
Les États-Unis constituent un partenaire de tout premier plan pour la France.
Les États-Unis constituent un partenaire de tout premier plan pour la France. So, les États-Unis, the United States, constitute un partenaire de tout premier plan. So, de premier plan is literally in the foreground. And usually when you describe something as de premier plan, it's top, it's the leading. Okay, so the United States constitute a leading partner pour la France, for France.
Et ce qui est en jeu, c'est la paix.
Et ce qui est en jeu, c'est la paix. So, et ce qui, and that which, or rather, and what, est en jeu, is in play. C'est la paix, is peace.
C'est la lutte contre le terrorisme. C'est la situation au Moyen-Orient.
C'est la lutte contre le terrorisme, c'est la situation au Moyen-Orient. So, c'est la lutte, it is the struggle, the fight. Contre le terrorisme, against terrorism. C'est la situation au Moyen-Orient, it's the situation in the Middle East.
Ce sont les relations économiques et c'est la préservation de la planète.
Ce sont les relations économiques et c'est la préservation de la planète. So we have ce sont now rather than c'est because relations économiques is plural. Ce sont les relations économiques, it's economic relations. Et c'est la préservation de la planète and it's the preservation, the conservation of the planet.
Sur tous ces sujets, j'engagerai sans tarder une discussion avec la nouvelle administration américaine.
Sur tous ces sujets, j'engagerai sans tarder une discussion avec la nouvelle administration américaine. So, sur tous ces sujets, literally on all of these subjects, j'engagerai, I will engage. Again, this is not a translation exercise as long as you understand what he's saying. It doesn't matter whether the English is perfect. Sans tarder, tarder means to be late or to do something slowly. So sans tarder is without being late. I might be tempted to translate that as without hesitation. Une discussion, a discussion. So on all of these subjects, I will engage without hesitation a discussion avec la nouvelle administration américaine, with the new American administration.
Elle entrera en fonction le 20 janvier.
And then I like the fact that he feels the need to remind us all, elle entrera en fonction le 20 janvier. So elle here refers back to l'administration américaine, because it's feminine. So it will enter office on the 20th of January. So en fonction, in function, in this case in office, because we're talking about politics. And then notice one thing that many people get wrong is when giving dates. In English we say on the 20th of January. In French, you don't need a preposition there. You don't need to say au 20 janvier, dans le 20 janvier, sur le 20... No, just le 20 janvier. Okay, so literally, she will enter in function the 20th January. Or rather, the 20 January, because you don't say le 20e janvier, just le 20 janvier. So, it will come into office on the 20th of January.
Mais je le ferai avec vigilance et franchise.
Mais je le ferai avec vigilance et franchise. So, but, je le ferai, I will do it, avec vigilance, with vigilance. Et franchise is frankness, honesty. So I will do it with vigilance and honesty.
Car certaines positions prises par Donald Trump durant la campagne américaine
Car certaines positions prises par Donald Trump durant la campagne américaine. Ce car, you may know, is a synonym for parce que, because. Certaines positions prises par Donald Trump. So literally certain positions taken by Donald Trump. I might say certain stances taken by Donald Trump, but again, that's a matter of translation rather than just understanding. Notice, though, the agreement of pris that becomes prise because we're describing these stances or these positions as taken, and position is feminine. We know that because it ends with tion, and so prise also has to be feminine and it's plural, so prise has to be plural too. So because certain stances taken by Donald Trump durant, again, during la campagne américaine, the American campaign. Notice that the words for campaign and countryside in French are the same, but the context is clear such that we understand that this is campaign and not countryside.
Doivent être confrontés aux valeurs et aux intérêts que nous partageons avec les États-Unis.
Doivent être confrontés aux valeurs et aux intérêts que nous partageons avec les États-Unis. So doivent être, have to be, confrontés, confronted or compared to valeurs et aux intérêts, to the values and the interests que nous partageons, that we share, partager is to share, avec les États-Unis, with the United States.
Et l'amitié entre nos deux peuples et notre histoire commune, nous y aidons.
Et l'amitié entre nos deux peuples et notre histoire commune, nous y aiderons. So, et l'amitié and the friendship entre nos deux peuples, between our two peoples, as it were, et notre histoire commune, and our common history, our shared history, nous y aiderons, will help us there, or perhaps will help us in that. The E here is optional, right? You don't need it. You could say, et l'amitié entre nos deux peuples et notre histoire commune, nous aiderons. But I suppose the E literally means there. In English, you might say, will help us in that.
La France poursuivra également la coopération transatlantique, sans concession et en toute indépendance.
La France poursuivra également la coopération transatlantique sans concession et en toute indépendance. So, la France, of course, is France. Poursuivra, poursuivre is to pursue. Également, equally, also. You'll notice he uses également a lot, and so do French people. Use également. If you find you're using aussi all the time, stick an également in there from time to time. It's a very nice word, and you can use it on a day-to-day basis. It's not incredibly formal. La coopération, cooperation, transatlantique, so transatlantic cooperation, sans concession, without concession, et en toute indépendance. Literally and in all independence, in complete independence, completely independently. France is going to do this. It's going to pursue this transatlantic cooperation on its own.
Ce nouveau contexte, provoqué par l'élection américaine,
Ce nouveau contexte provoqué par l'élection américaine. So, ce nouveau contexte, this new context, provoqué is to provoke or to cause, par l'élection américaine, by the American election,
exige plus que jamais que la France soit forte et qu'elle prenne ses responsabilités partout dans le monde, comme je l'ai fait depuis 2012.
Exige plus que jamais que la France soit forte et qu'elle prenne ses responsabilités partout dans le monde, comme je le fais depuis 2012. Okay, so we have some nice subjunctives in here. Exiger is to demand or to require. Plus que jamais, more than ever, que la France soit forte, that France be strong, et qu'elle prenne ses responsabilités and that it take on its responsibilities partout dans le monde, throughout the world, everywhere in the world, comme je le fais depuis 2012, as I have been doing since 2012. So here is a classic case of of French using the present tense and English using a past, right? I have been doing since 2012. French says, if you're still doing it, use the present tense. Je le fais depuis 2012. So this whole sentence here, or part of a sentence, exige plus que jamais que la France soit forte et qu'elle prenne ses responsabilités partout dans le monde comme je le fais depuis 2012. Demands or requires more than ever that France be strong and that it take on its responsibilities throughout the world, as I've been doing since 2012.
Ce contexte appelle également à une Europe unie.
Ce contexte appelle également à une Europe unie. Little dig at the UK there. This context calls as well for a united Europe.
Et également capable de s'exprimer et de porter une politique partout où ses intérêts ou ses valeurs sont en cause.
And here it gets a little bit politician-y, est également capable de s'exprimer et de porter une politique partout où ses intérêts ou ses valeurs sont en cause. And also capable of s'exprimer, expressing itself, et de porter une politique, and to carry a politics, a policy perhaps would be better in English here, partout, everywhere, où ses intérêts, where these interests, où ses valeurs, where these values, sont en cause, are in question or are involved. So again, like I said, it's very politician talk, equally capable of expressing itself and carrying policies, having policies perhaps, everywhere where these interests, where these values are involved. Really, the important thing here is not to understand exactly what he means, just that you know what the words mean, right? Because politicians speak in their own special way, and sometimes we don't have a clue what they're on about.
Je pense à la liberté, à la dignité, à la cohésion sociale, à la lutte contre la pauvreté.
And finally, he says, je pense à la liberté, à la dignité, à la cohésion sociale, à la lutte contre la pauvreté. These are words that French politicians use all the time. Je pense à, I'm thinking about, la liberté, freedom, à la dignité, dignity, à la cohésion sociale, social cohesion, et la lutte contre la pauvreté. So la lutte, we know, is the fight, the struggle, contre la pauvreté, against poverty. So one thing I want to highlight here is we have an expression, je pense à, I'm thinking about. And notice, because we have a list that follows that, he repeats the à. This is very, very common in French. It's not necessary. You could say, je pense à la liberté, la dignité, la cohésion sociale, la lutte contre la pauvreté. That would be fine. But there's a tendency in French to repeat the preposition in that expression. So, je pense à la liberté, à la dignité, à la cohésion sociale, à la lutte contre la pauvreté. So that's the video by François Hollande. It does go on a little bit further, but it kind of gets into more politician speech. It's not that interesting. If you want to watch the rest of it, I will put a link to it in the description. But now we're going to move on to the speech, or part of the speech, made by Marine Le Pen. It's only a short clip, because I don't want to keep you too long. Before we watch it though, if you don't already know, Marine Le Pen is the leader of Le Front National, the National Front, which is France's far right-wing party. And as you can imagine, the leader, Marine Le Pen, is very, very happy about Donald Trump's victory. She's been supporting him from the very start. She was very pro-Brexit as well, because she's pro-Frexit, I don't know. And so she has a very different reaction to this, and we're just going to watch the very start of the speech where she says something quite poignant.
Les Américains ont voté. Ils ont refusé le statu quo. Ils ont montré par une décision qui a surpris ceux qui croient que les situations sont immuables, que le monde bouge, que le monde change, que le mouvement fait partie de la vie des nations. Ce qui s'est passé cette nuit n'est pas la fin du monde, c'est la fin d'un monde.
Okay, so what does she say here? Let's go through it sentence by sentence, just as we did before.
Les Américains ont voté.
Les Américains ont voté. This should be relatively clear. The American people, the Americans, have voted. Notice she doesn't say le peuple américain, but les Américains.
Ils ont refusé le statu quo.
Ils ont refusé le statu quo. So if you didn't realize when she first said it, you might notice now, statu quo means status quo, okay, the norm, everything going as it is. They refused the status quo. They want change.
Ils ont montré par une décision qui a surpris ceux qui croient que les situations sont immuables.
Okay, so this sentence is very long, which is why I've split it, and is so typically French. You start off saying one thing, then you add a little remark in the middle, and then you finish the sentence. And in English, it can be quite hard to follow. If this were a translation exercise, we would probably move things around a little bit. But it's not. Okay, we don't want a perfect translation here, we just want to understand what she's saying. So, ils ont montré. They have shown. Montrer is to show. Then we have the parenthetical part. Par une décision qui a surpris ceux qui croient que les situations sont immuables. So par une décision, literally by a decision, in English you'd probably say with a decision, qui a surpris, which has surprised, ceux qui croient, those who believe. English people have a tendency to say something like les personnes qui, the people who, les gens qui, the same, the people who. In French it's far more common and far easier just to say ceux qui, those who. Okay, you can say it in English as well, but French seems to prefer ceux qui to les personnes qui, les gens qui, just because it's a lot shorter, right? So, which has surprised those who believe que les situations sont immuables, that situations are immuable is unchanging, unmovable. Okay, so this is what we have so far. They have shown, with a decision which has surprised those who believe that situations are unchanging,
Que le monde bouge.
que le monde bouge. That the world moves. Bouger is to move. So if we take out the sort of par une décision blah 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 part, what we say is ils ont montré que le monde bouge. They've shown that the world moves. Okay, it's a very long sentence for what is a very simple statement, but like I said, it's a very French thing to do, to add those sort of extra things in the middle of a sentence and then finish the sentence, particularly in speeches.
Que le monde change.
Que le monde change. So she's adding to that idea that the world moves, that the world changes. Okay, hence the repetition of que. Again, very common in French to repeat a preposition, or in this case, a conjunction, when you've got a list of things.
Que le mouvement fait partie de la vie des nations.
Final item in that list, que le mouvement fait partie de la vie des nations. I don't really know what she's trying to say here, that the movement is part of the life of nations. I mean, I have no idea what she's saying there. But faire partie de is a very useful expression, to be a part of. You don't really say être partie de, you say faire partie de. So that the movement belongs to, or is part of, the life of nations. I mean, I have no idea. But still, we understand the words and we've learnt a nice little expression with it.
Ce qui s'est passé cette nuit n'est pas la fin du monde, c'est la fin d'un monde.
And then again, the phrase that everyone was talking about. Ce qui s'est passé cette nuit n'est pas la fin du monde, mais la fin d'un monde. So, ce qui s'est passé, that which happened, or rather just what happened, se passer, very useful to happen. Cette nuit, literally this night, you might translate that as last night. N'est pas la fin du monde is not the end of the world, c'est la fin d'un monde. It's the end of a world. Ooh, what does she mean? Nobody really knows, but it doesn't matter. Again, we've learnt some useful stuff. So there we go, they are those two clips. If you have any questions about the language, the politics, if you really want to, I'm not a sort of complete expert, but you know, I know a little bit. Then by all means put a comment in the comments section, not that you're going to put it anywhere else. Yeah, and if you want any more of these, then do let me know. If you want a specific topic, then do let me know as well. Bear in mind that it does take me a while to do these. I was going to do one on the Olympics, but I didn't have time and I couldn't get it done, and by the time I had time to do it, it wasn't exactly relevant anymore. So some people have asked me to do this once a week. I don't have time to do that, but you know, if we can have them relatively regular, then that would be cool. So if you have any particular topics you want me to talk about, I will. As I said at the start, I will try to make the next one a little bit less political. Yeah, and that's it. So I hope this video has been helpful. If you're interested in this, I encourage you to read more about it, watch more videos about it in order to improve your French. And yeah, I will see you next time. À bientôt.